We're ready to go. All right. Good morning and welcome to the Vancouver City Council meeting of Tuesday, July the 11th, 2023. It's my speaker. We're good? Yeah, awesome. This council meeting is being convened by electronic means as authorized under Part 14 of the procedure bylaw, the City of Vancouver electronic meetings. As such, council members and the public may participate in person or by electronic means. If a council member attending by If a council member attending by electronic means loses connection during the voting process, team members are available to get you back online quickly while the voting process is suspended. Team members' contact information has been circulated to you. Video of council members speaking, presentations, and vote results will be projected on the live stream when available. Council members are reminded that, in accordance with Section 14.13 of the procedure bylaw, members must enable their video to confirm quorum. In case of an emergency where we need to evacuate the building, I'd like to direct your attention to the exits. There's an exit right there, so just go through the glass doors and veer off to your left. And if that's blocked for whatever reason, there's 4 exits here. Walk calmly to one of those exits and we'll give you more instructions thereafter. I'd also like to highlight that there's the defibrillator at the end of this hallway in case anyone feels a little pain on their chest. We'd also like to acknowledge that we are hosting today's council meeting on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, and we do want to thank them for their generosity and their hospitality and the love and the care that they show this land that we get to live, work, and play on. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to be incredibly intentional to unlearn what we've been taught in the past and learn the true histories as to what's happened on these lands. And if we do that, I truly believe we can have more meaningful and robust reconciliation, and we can build a brighter future for all of us and our kids and our grandkids, and 7 generations going forward, paddling together in the same direction and a life of abundance. And so thank you very much. I also want to recognize the incredible contributions of our team members at the city. And we've said this countless times. They work incredibly hard and they really care about what they do. And it's an honor to be working side by side with them. Now, on a more somber note, I would like to take a couple of moments and sort of highlight the fact that on July the 4th, so last week, there was a tragic accident. A counselor in Merritt by the name of Claire Newman was involved in an accident. She stepped out of her car and she was a victim of a hit and run, and tragically she did pass away. And I know the family is incredibly devastated right now. Claire's husband, the daughter, the family, and their friends. I know our counterparts, Merritt Getz in Merritt, and that entire chamber, as at a loss, they are incredibly close, and I know the community's heartbroken as well. And so, if we could please all stand and maybe observe a moment of silence for Claire and her family and the entire community, that'd be great. Great, thank you very much, everyone. And for the people in Merritt and everyone who knew Claire, the City of Vancouver and all of us here send her love, and our thoughts are with you right now. So, Clerk, may we please have a roll call?
Mayor Sim is in the chair. Councillor Carr. Councillor Kubiyan. Councillor Dominato. Councillor Bly is on a leave of absence for civic business. Councillor Boyle. Councillor Fry. Councillor Montague.
Present.
Councillor Klassen. Councillor Meisner. And Councillor Zhou. You have quorum, Mayor Sim.
Great, thank you very much. Any comments on agenda items can be sent to council using the web form on the city's website. The link to that form will be tweeted out on @VanCityClerk. I also want to note the City of Vancouver's longstanding commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, including the utmost respect for all genders. I remind council that when addressing speakers and the city's team members, we will avoid using gendered honorifics and will instead refer to the person by first and last name, role, or title. Today, we have 3 administrative items: in-camera motion, adoption of minutes, and matters adopted on consent, 4 reports, 2 referral reports, 9 bylaws, 4 administrative motions, notice of council member motions, new business, and inquiries and other matters. The plan for today, we're going to break at noon for lunch, followed by an in-camera meeting, return at 3 p.m. and complete the agenda by 5 p.m. as we have a public hearing at 6 p.m. In camera, council is required to meet in camera later this week. The reasons and authority under the Vancouver Charter are listed in the agenda. Would someone like to move a motion to go into camera this week? Great, thank you, Councillor Lisa Dominato, and seconder, Councillor Carr, thank you very much. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Minutes 1 are from the council meeting on June the 27th, 2023. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Adoption, great. Maybe we have a seconder. Great, Councillor Carr. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Minutes 2 are from the council meeting following the Standing Committee on Policy and Strategic Priorities meeting of June the 28th, 2023. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Would someone like to move? Councillor Clausen, seconded by Councillor Montague. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Minutes 3 are from the public hearing on June the 29th, 2023. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Would someone like to move? Great, Councillor Joe, seconded by Councillor Montague. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, motion carries unanimously. Matters adopted on consent. Council will now consider matters adopted on consent. We have reports 2, 3, and 4, and refer reports 1 and 2 on the consent agenda for council's consideration. Report 1 is being held to hear from speakers. And I better grab. Okay. Council may adopt the recommendations for reports 2, 3, and 4 and refer reports 1 and 2 on consent. And we have, okay, so does any member wish to hold the items for debate or questions to team members? And we have Councillor Carr. And then, thank you, Councillor Montague.
Hold report 3 for questions, please.
Okay. Does any member want to declare a conflict of interest on the consent items? Okay. Oh, there you go. Sorry, Councillor Montague, are you?
It's just hold over.
Oh, okay. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, I wish to declare a conflict on report 4, the Mayor and Council Expenses Bylaw, for the reason that I have a pending claim for legal reimbursement. And while this bylaw will be forward-looking and not retroactive, out of abundance of caution, I'm going to recuse on it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Just bear with me for 1 second. So that's okay. So we have reports, or report number 2 and referral reports number 1 and 2 for the consent agenda. Would someone like to move adoption of the recommendations before council contained in the reports? Great, thank you, Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Carr, I believe. All those in favor say yay. Okay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Okay, so the following have been approved for consent, or sorry, on consent. Report number 2, 545 East Cordova Street, RH1-2, amendment to the grant agreement between the City of Vancouver and Lookout Housing Society and Health Society. And then we have referral report number 1, CD-1 rezoning 5235 to 5275 Kirstland Drive, and CD-1 rezoning 3747 Renfrew Street. Okay. Right. Okay. So report number 1, relationship protocol agreement, Squamish Nation and City of Vancouver has been held to hear from registered speakers. Does any member wish to declare a conflict of interest on this item? Great. We have team members from the city manager's office here to provide opening remarks and a verbal presentation, as well as to answer any questions council might have.
Amasa, Bill Hampnacht, Wayu, Gisbuk Wadam, Gisbuk Gitwilgiot, Dewil Zabu, Lakwil Lamps, Dewil Watku, and Simshan Nu. Good morning, Michelle Bryant Gravel, Senior Director, Indigenous Relations. I just did my introduction in my language. My traditional name is Bill Hamnach, and I am from the Gitwilgiots tribe of the Gisbugwada crest. I am from the community of Lakwillamps, and I am from the Simshan Nation. Today, we will be presenting the report together with representatives of the Squamish Nation. I would like to introduce Swayalkin Wilson Williams, who will be speaking on behalf of Squamish today, and I will give him some time first.
Thank you, Michelle. Friends, Mayor, Council, it's an honor to be here today. Hat squal tanoyap, Yuan hatan squalowin, Shin Quinman tomiup, Swelchten quinquishamen, Skoltmish ochomelch, Aslahan ochomelch, Kamkamale ochomelch, Sanoch ochomelch, Waiyam ta Skoltmish. I come here with good feelings this morning, with an open mind and open heart. In my hand raised in praise to all the work that has been done here in Vancouver, as I acknowledged the place name here as well in our Skohotmish Nachum, Kamkamalai, and acknowledged who I am and where I come from. So I acknowledged village of Aslahan, which is on the north side by the sea bus, but also Sanok as well, where my great-great-grandfather resided as well. I also shared in the spirit of why we're here today, Waiyam Taskoltmish, which is Squamish Strong, which is the theme behind the protocol agreement that we are discussing this morning. It is with great pride that I say this phrase, because it was only a short while ago that we didn't feel all that strong. In our own homeland, the last time we did this type of agreement was back in 2010. Times were different, relationships unequal. Our previous memorandum of understanding and protocol agreement was written in the pre-UNDRIP era at a time where there was no acknowledgement by any government of our rights and title to the lands and the waters, and we had to fight for what we've had. But now, with UNDRIP and the adoption of DRIPA and all the hard work we and other host nations have done with the city of Vancouver, the work that reflects Vancouver's commitment to implementing policies in the line with the principles of UNDRIP, I truly feel our strength has returned. We have momentum. Momentum that has started not too long ago, but has come so far. And we feel strongly that now is the time, during the 100th year anniversary of the amalgamation of the Skohotmishochomeoch, the Squamish Nation, to reaffirm our relationship, our partnership in reconciliation, to create an agreement that is reflective of our principles, our values, and traditions, but most importantly, reflective of who we are as peoples. Wa'iem Tasquamish, we are redefining our relationship with the outside world. And we look forward to walking together with the city to build an understanding on these principles, to continue the work of reconciliation together, to be stronger together, and to truly lead as the city of reconciliation. I look forward to your discussions on this agreement and sincerely hope you are in favor of going forward together on this. I'll now turn it back over to Michelle, who will go over the agreement and answer any questions you may have. Shin kun min tomi up yuan hatan squalwin. Thank you.
Thank you, Soyakshin. So the report that you have in front of you today is the Wa'iem Ta Squamish, the Squamish Strong Protocol, relationship protocol that we have been working toward with the Squamish Nation. And the city has already done significant work in this area. And I just want to bring to your attention back in 2014 when the city acknowledged that they were on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. And in 2014, also, the city became the City of Reconciliation. And in March of 2021, the city started embarking on the work with the task force of the UNDRIP strategy. And in October of 2022, the city adopted and endorsed the city's UNDRIP strategy. So a lot of work has already been done. And these protocol agreements, and this one with Squamish, is really to set a foundation to ensure that that relationship will continue to build and continue to maintain its strength and build its strength over time, and will outlast whatever person is in the seats from either government. And given the UNDRIP strategy that has already been adopted, the part of the protocol agreements is part of the foundational call to action number 3 that states to develop stronger intergovernmental coordination and communication processes and explore opportunities to develop, renew, expand, or strengthen relationship protocol agreements, MOUs or MOAs, and protocol agreements with Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. The Wa'iem Ta Squamish protocol with the Squamish Nation is in line with this foundational call to action that is already listed in the agreement. We are finally entering a time of meaningful reconciliation, and this protocol will be the foundation to the city's relationship with Squamish. And just going back to not only UNDRIP, but the TRC's calls to actions and the relationships that the city has built over time with Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. This protocol and the city's recognition of Squamish title rights and inherent jurisdiction within its territory. It references the city's governance authorities and responsibilities as set out in the Vancouver Charter, the objective of providing guidance on how Squamish and the city engage on advancing reconciliation, and the Squamish guiding principles, and the commitment to develop an MOU based on these principles that will establish a formal process and that leads to substantive agreements that support the full enjoyment of the Squamish title rights and jurisdiction in their territory. This is the beginning of practices of Indigenous inclusion and moves away from the historical harms inflicted upon Indigenous peoples by all levels of government. And in your package, you will have in Appendix A, the relationship agreement. I've outlined what highlights the relationship protocol is, and I would welcome any questions that you might have.
Just a couple and really appreciate the huge amount of work and the significance of this moment. I just wanted to ask, and I know this is mentioned in the report, about the timing that brings this report forward to us now, and then the work that's happening with the Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh nations as well.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Boyle. The reasoning for bringing the Squamish protocol first, and the work is being done, yes, thank you for that, on the Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh agreements. Squamish is celebrating, as my friend mentioned, their 100-year amalgamation celebrations in the month of July, and it was quite significant for them to sign these agreements with various municipalities, which they have with the District of North Vancouver, no, the City of North Vancouver, and the Municipality of Squamish, as well as provincial and federal government. So the City of Vancouver would be one of those agreements.
I appreciate that. And my other question is, and again, I know this is recognized in our meetings and in many city documents, the City of Vancouver recognizes that we sit on the territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Can you just maybe say a bit about the recognition of this being the territory of those three nations and not others?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I guess I just know that we have a speaker later who will speak from a different nation, and the work the city has done for years and increasingly in recent years has been in partnership with Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. And so I guess I was just looking for any clarity
you.
staff might have about those relationships in particular with those nations.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that clarification.
Sorry, I was being vague.
So historically, the City of Vancouver has recognized the three nations, Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. I believe it was based on the distinctions-based approach that the province also follows within the inherent and unceded territories of the nations of this land who were here prior to the City of Vancouver. And it has historically always been the three nations in recognizing their territories.
Okay.
Is there anything any of you wanted to add to that? Yeah, sure.
Yes, really good question. I think that, thank you, Michelle. Yeah, it also identifies and sort of reflects on the rich history of the nations itself and connections to the land, and whether we're looking at it from a scope of pre-colonization or how our families and our nations have thrived and sustained our peoples off the land. So there's that deep, rich connection that, when I introduced myself, I acknowledged my great-great-grandfather was my great-grandfather as well, who was spearheading how we integrate to Western society and develop the amalgamation, which we're celebrating this month, particularly on July 23rd. But I think it's that when we talk about the shared traditional territories, the three nations, when you look at the historically, with Tsleil-Waututh, they were a family that didn't sign the amalgamation with the Squamish Nation, so they formed their own, which, in the government terms, their own nation at the time. And then Musqueam, we always lived with our families there and thrived here in Vancouver as well. So I hope that provides a little context and background, but
Yep,
good question.
Really appreciate it. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks so much for the introduction. My question is really very similar to Councillor Boyle's, but I want to start with the question of how unique is this protocol? I mean, how many other cities have proceeded with a protocol agreement with the traditional nations whose lands we sit on?
We did a preliminary question out to some of the major cities in Canada, and we have come to how many? There's been about 5 of the major cities across Canada that we were able to find on a short search. We didn't do a comprehensive search, but that's what we've been able to find out.
Okay. It would be great to have conversations also with them in the future, and bringing together not only the nations and their land that are the traditional owners of the land, but also the councils. I'd love to see the conversations about the journey as we move forward. Okay, second question. It's often asked around the distinction between the nations whose traditional territories Vancouver is on, and we acknowledge, and urban Indigenous peoples. So similar to Councillor Boyle's question around a speaker that we may have that might raise that. What is our plan as a city moving forward in terms of working in a distinct way with urban Indigenous peoples who come from other places?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Carr. The distinctions-based approach follows the protocols of recognizing the territories on these lands that we are on, which is Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. We do have a responsibility as a city to engage with the urban Indigenous population as well. And as part of the UNDRIP strategy, there will be a series of engagements with the urban Indigenous peoples of the city to find out basically to workshop the strategy to see what areas are missing, to identify areas of concern to the urban Indigenous population as well, and bring those back to the intergovernmental table of the strategy as we're developing the action plan. And one of the objectives that we hope to come out of that engagement is how do we engage meaningfully with that population of Vancouver as well, so that their voices are heard.
And how important is it that we have a protocol that clarifies our relationship with the title holders in, I guess, as a background to developing relationships with other people who come from other lands?
Yeah, the protocol agreements with Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh in particular are important and relevant in the work that we're doing today as we move towards meaningful reconciliation with the title holders of the land. It, like I mentioned before, it really establishes that foundation. And from that foundation, if we're talking about building, that foundation is our solid ground to stand on, and it's always our north star, so to speak. And when we are having good times in our relationships, we tend to forget about these protocols. And sometimes when our relationships enter into difficult conversations, we bring ourselves back to the principles in these relationships to remember that our agreement is to work together and to build stronger communities together.
I like that. Our North Star. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Yeah, thank you. And just a follow up, I think in terms of trying to center the work for the public, and because I find that education is a really important component of the work and understanding. Last term there was the UNDRIP task force. It's now evolved and it's the MSTV intergovernmental table. Can you speak a little bit to how this connects into the work that the group is doing and how they're focusing their efforts, like how sort of specific actions are going to come forward, just because I know I have the benefit of sitting on it along with other councillors, but a lot of councillors don't have that line of sight or the public.
For sure. Thank you. So the intergovernmental table is the table that council has asked to bring forth an action plan to council, which will come to council in June of 2024. So currently the three nations, Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, as well as the City of Vancouver, are carrying on the work of the task force to move the strategy to an action plan that is ready for implementation. So the intergovernmental table is the political, elected political leadership of each of the four governments. They meet quarterly. Underneath that are the senior staff leads from each of the four governments, and they meet monthly to carry out the work of the intergovernmental table to get towards our action plan that staff will eventually carry out if it's adopted in 2024.
Okay, and fair to say there's lots of discussion around short-term versus longer-term priorities and debate on what should be tackled first, so to speak?
Yes. So recently we have undertaken what our 18-month outlook would be to allow city to budget for upcoming items in 2024 as we carry out our budgeting processes. Understanding there are 79 calls to action within the strategy, and we're developing a 5-year action plan. So not all 79 calls to action will be in the strategy, but they'll be commented on because the intention is to bring 5-year iterations of the action plan as we move forward, because the city is not going anywhere and the nations are not going anywhere. So it's really important to make sure that these relationships continue to build momentum and strength as we move forward.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. And then one follow-up, in terms of transparency and communication, do you know why there's no information about the MSTV table and its structure, composition, and kind of focus on the city website? I can't find it, and I've searched. I can find lots under it from last term, but I can't find anything on this one.
Yeah, we are a small department, and we have been working really hard to get the 18-month outlook from the MSTV table going for the budgeting process. We are currently working on updating the website together with CEC to make sure that has current information.
Okay, so if we want to bring the public along on the journey, so to speak, they will be able to see the information. And
Yes, that is our plan.
okay, super. Thank you.
This is the city moderator. Can you hear me in the chamber? This is the city moderator. We please stay on the line. We connect to council chamber, and they will start hearing from speakers shortly. Thank you.
To join the conference, enter your access code.
Hey, David, can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect.
Hi, Robin. Can you do a quick sound check if you can't hear on the line?
I'm on the line. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Just bear with us a bit longer, and then we should start hearing from speaker shortly. Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
Just bear with us a bit longer.
If council, we're ready to hear our first speaker. Robin, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there, sir.
Great. And Robin, it's not noted here. Are you in favor or opposed to the?
I think I'm generally in favor. It's a good thing to build relationships.
Great. Thank you. And you have 3 minutes.
And I have a PowerPoint that should be up. I just can't see if that's up there.
It's up there.
Okay. So, good day. I'm presenting about this relationship agreement. My name's Robin Tavender. I'm one of the permanent water people and a member of La Nation de l'Eau Permanente. We are a nomadic indigenous people, but I'm speaking on my own behalf today because we haven't really had time to think about all this. So in our cosmology, we live in the light. We are governed by our ancient oral law, which is our sovereign and our inheritance. It is our most precious possession that we are governed by our ancient oral law, which has been handed down to us since time immemorial. And we see on page 5 of the report that the city is going to recognize certain rights and titles and inherent jurisdiction. So my concern is that the city is not considering the rights of all Indigenous peoples. UNDRIP Article 43 says that this is for Indigenous peoples of the world, not Indigenous peoples of a political subdivision or political entity, even though the boots-on-the-ground reality is that that's who's going to administer all of these rights. So as for unceded territory, I've given you a report that I submitted on behalf of the nation when you were considering the UNDRIP strategy, and the notion of traditional territory or hereditary property is eerily similar to that given by Gaius in his Institutes of Roman Law. And it's entirely possible that other peoples evolved a very similar notion of territorial property, but it's not universal. And some Indigenous peoples like us, nomadic peoples, have a very different relationship to time and space. The nation's view, which we've expressed publicly in Hansard, is that we have inherent rights in the place we live and have always lived, which we call the light. We carry our rights with us in our souls. They're not appurtenant to lands or waters or air. So where does this requirement for cession come from? We just don't understand that. We'd never had a landlord, We don't understand that there's anyone who's a hereditary landlord over us. So are we required to assimilate other people's systems of land tenure? And I guess the question here is, who gets a protocol? Does Standing Water get a protocol, or are protocols only for peoples whose, I didn't say next slide. Okay, sorry, I got confused. Anyway, that's the general flavor. Next slide. I guess I would close by quoting from the preamble of UNDRIP, which says, recognizing the urgent need to respect and promote the inherent rights of Indigenous peoples, which derive from their political, economic, and social structures, and from their cultures, spiritual traditions, histories, and philosophies, especially their rights to their lands, territories, and resources. So it's not just the Canadian positive law test of historical possession at the time of sovereignty as articulated in Delgamuukw. There's a much broader recognition in UNDRIP of rights deriving from political, economic, social structures, and especially philosophy. And our philosophy of law is very different. So I just wanted to, because it's not on behalf of the nation, put that out there, that we may not have all the pieces on the table, and that we're not really considering Indigenous peoples like Standing Water, and especially nomadic peoples who may not have ever had a fixed settlement. So thank you for listening, but again, generally supportive, because it's always good to build relationships.
Great, thank you very much, and right on time. So thank you. Now that
just exactly like a Swiss watch.
So that's the end of our speakers list for this item. So thank you for addressing council. Would someone like to move a motion? Councillor Boyle, seconded by Councillor Carr. Council, is there any discussion? There is. Councillor Boyle.
Thanks. I'll be really brief, but again, just want to recognize the significance of this moment and the huge amount of work that's gone in from the Squamish Nation and from staff at the City of Vancouver to put the pedal to the metal a little bit and make sure that we did this well and quickly in time for the 100-year amalgamation ceremony, which is a huge moment and an honor to get to be part of it in this way and to lift up the Squamish Nation in this way. And I know it leads to a lot of important work that Council has been engaged in with Squamish and Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh around implementing UNDRIP. And so look forward to continuing that work rooted in this protocol and our shared history and the existence of the Squamish Nation on this land since time immemorial, and the way that relationship to the land that we sit on should inform our future together. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, good morning. I want to thank Wilson for being here this morning, and also Michelle and Lindsay for their work, and the task force in general. It's been a pleasure to attend this term. I have the privilege of sitting on this for the first time, and the words that Wilson, when you spoke and you said sort of approaching with an open mind and an open heart, I definitely feel that spirit around the table, and it's a tremendous learning opportunity to be part of that. Hence the reason I asked my question around sharing some of the information with the public, because I do think a big part of reconciliation is also building bridges and understanding. And when we don't share the information, that's sometimes when we fall down or stub our toes, because people are not, they're not aware of what's happening. And then they see outcomes, but they don't understand sort of the work that's going into the process to get there. So that's the one thing I wanted to highlight. But I am really grateful to see this. It is a significant piece. It's sort of a qualitative document in terms of the how we work together, and a lot of the what happens outside of it. But it certainly, I think, exhibits the philosophy and the commitment that the parties have, and particularly I think the city is really committed to this work. And so I hope that that's clearly shown and demonstrated this morning to the Squamish, and I look forward also to having similar protocol agreements executed with our other nations, also with Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Wilson, for being here to present to us. And thank you to the Squamish Nation for the willingness to engage with us to achieve this Waiyamta Squamish protocol. It's a real landmark. It's a really, in my mind, very, very major step forward for the city. I've been on council when we had the Walk for Reconciliation, when we had the Year for Reconciliation, when we became a city of reconciliation. But this is the kind of, as was stated, the solid ground. This is I think the building block for a very different kind of relationship, a very respectful and I think exciting, meaningful, and productive relationship. And so it will set the ground for other relationships. And I love the idea that it's our North Star. It's where we know we're headed, and the values imbued are the values that are explicitly stated in the agreement, I think, are the strong values that make our city better, that make the relationships we have better. So thank you, everyone, for the work, staff, Squamish Nation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Mayor. And I think you're going to hear an echo of thanks and congratulations to Squamish Nation, to Wilson and Arthur who are here, who spoke, but also to our staff, Michelle, who gave us very in-depth briefings on the protocol to understand it. So appreciative of your work and support and help. And again, just to echo, this is a significant milestone, the 100th anniversary of amalgamation, but also of having this protocol developed and in place and initiated. And Wilson, I just want to reflect on your comments of Squamish strong and not at times having that strength, feeling that strength, and being in a position of strength. And I think that it reflects not only a new relationship and reconciliation, but the opportunity to lift people up, to lift communities up. And I think that's an opportunity we have with this protocol. And so look forward to continuing to work together with Squamish Nation in the city. And again, congratulations.
Councillor Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I also like to echo what my colleagues said about the importance of this agreement. Also, thanks for all the team effort from the nation and from our City of Vancouver staff team. I think this agreement once again demonstrates our commitment to reconciliation and respect for the rights and the culture of Squamish Nation. It could provide a framework and foundation for building a positive and collaborative relationship moving forward. And also, I think it sets a very positive example. It could serve as a model for other Indigenous communities and municipalities, highlighting the importance of collaboration, respect, and also recognizing the Indigenous rights. Yeah, so with that, I'm going to 100% fully support this agreement. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you very much. I'll keep my comments very brief because, do I have to see the chair? Can I please see the chair to Councillor Klassen? Awesome, thank you very much. I'll keep it brief because a lot of it's already been said. I just love the fact that Vancouver is a city of reconciliation and the proof's in the pudding, and we continue to drive forward. I really do want to thank Lindsay and Michelle for all the hard work that you and your entire team has done, and I want to thank our friend Councillor Wilson. I just call you Wilson. For your friendship and the love and care that you show the land here, and allowing us to be part of this process. And so make no mistake about it, there's still a lot of work to be done, but I think this is a great another great step forward into achieving true and meaningful reconciliation. So thank you. All right. Seeing no one else on the queue, can we please put this to a vote? And the motion passes unanimously with Councillor Bly away on like business. Great. Okay, so the next item in the order, by the way, congrats. The next item in the order of the agenda held by, held is report number 3, which is titled Renewal of the Heritage Energy Retrofit Grant Program. And Councillor Montague, you held this item, so you have 5 minutes to ask questions to team members.
Thanks, Mayor. I just have, I think, 2 questions to start, and then we'll go from there. I see this is $300,000. That's capped at $8,000 per home. That's correct. With a goal of 25 to 30 homes being potentially retrofitted. So that's $200,000 to $240,000. Where's the $60,000 to $100,000? Is that administration costs or what?
Yeah, correct. Thank you, Councillor. It is an administration cost that goes to the Vancouver Heritage Foundation to run the program. That is correct.
So potentially $100,000 and a third of the money in administration?
It is a high contact program. There are individuals trained by the Vancouver Heritage Foundation that visit the homeowner and assist and support the home in undertaking the retrofits. So it is a very high touch program.
Okay. I did a quick search online. I was able to find pretty quickly about 20 homes that are currently for sale in Vancouver that would I believe fit the categories and criteria listed, that single family built before 1940 or heritage designation. In Vancouver, of course, heated and hot water through natural gas. Photos showed gas cooktops, that sort of thing. All of them were listed between $2 and $10 million. So if I owned or decided to purchase one of these homes, I could qualify for one of these grants.
That's correct. You would qualify for these grants, also the federal grants and the provincial grants. That's correct.
Those are my two questions for now, Mayor. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Councillor Clausen.
Thanks very much. We don't have a representation from the Heritage Foundation here today, but I know this is a program that they support. We've seen the funding for this been reduced over recent years. Can you explain why?
That's a great question. The program has been successful, and we're currently evaluating how we could redevelop the program with the Vancouver Heritage Foundation to respond to the changing needs of housing in the city.
Okay. By changing means, changing needs of housing, is this just more we're going to try and prioritize what over this?
Great question. Thank you, Councillor. The Vancouver Heritage Foundation has expressed interest in expanding the program and focusing more so on multifamily heritage retention and preservation of older buildings. Thank
you. Just with regards to the energy retrofit funding that Council approved earlier, where do we typically, what kind of programs or similar programs is some of that funding being spent?
Sorry, could you rephrase the question?
Yeah, so just in the recommendation A, it just says the source of the funding of the 2023, for non-city buildings was approved by council in our capital budget. So just give me some examples.
Thank you, Council. I'll turn that over to Sean Pander to answer that.
Yeah, that source of funds is meant to accelerate the decarbonization of existing buildings of all types across the city. So some examples of that money, we've set aside a fair amount of that money in response to the Earth Day motion to look at providing incentives and owner supports, the coaching, the decision-making tools for people who aren't experts in this space. So we've reserved funding for that. Last year, Council approved some first of their kind in Canada regulations for large existing commercial buildings. And the Building Owners and Managers Association were very supportive of that. They felt it was really good regulatory development. But one part of what brought them on board was our shared recognition that smaller commercial building owners would need supports. So we're looking at developing some tools where there are gaps in utility and provincial supports for those commercial buildings. So again, things to help them recommission their buildings. Buildings, it's like a tune-up, a building tune-up program that's not available to some of the smaller commercial buildings. That would be another example. We continue to support heat pump water heaters in single-family homes. As you know, we just launched the residential apartment retrofit accelerator program. We have a $2 million funding agreement in place with BC Nonprofit Housing Association to support retrofit of non-market and Aboriginal housing retrofits. So that's some examples of the types of programs that capital plan and capital budget are supporting.
I know that we have partnerships with BC Hydro, Clean BC funding, I believe. Do they make a distinction when we're dealing with sort of privately owned homes versus public institutions or nonprofits in terms of where they would fund?
There is some in the multifamily space. There are higher levels. Actually, they do differentiate. There's income threshold tests where lower income homeowners can get higher levels of support and coaching. That's both in the multifamily space as well as in the single family home space.
And this is just more of a values question. Why would we, just as a city, want to support retrofitting these heritage homes?
Well, to get to the objectives that council's assigned us, we do need to bring in requirements and regulations. We need to set new expectations. The challenge is with existing buildings, houses, multifamily, whatever, for some of those buildings, it's relatively easy to meet a regulatory threshold. Other buildings, it's going to be very challenging. And so that disparity in impact of the potential regulations is a real challenge in bringing those forward successfully. So it's our philosophy that you identify the people that will have a harder time meeting potential requirements and offer them support, which makes it easier to bring those requirements forward because you've recognized some people are going to need a little help to succeed in meeting those.
Chair, I might have additional questions. I'm wondering if I move for a second round of questions.
Seconder, Councillor Joe, all in favor? All opposed? Great, we will.
I'm at my time,
and your time's up. So thank you. Councillor Meisner.
Thanks, Mayor. So just a few questions about the $300,000. I saw that it states in the report that currently this program is open to homes of any value and individuals of any wealth level. So will that still be in place for this $300,000?
As the council report is currently written, yes, it would be open to homes of any value, but certainly there could be an amendment to cap the value.
Okay, but as it stands right now, it will not be means tested.
That is correct.
Okay, so you could have a $10 million heritage home and make $300,000 a year, and you'll get a rebate for your induction cooktop.
That is correct, as it currently stands.
Okay. Can you explain to me the gift card aspect?
Oh, of course, yeah. So one thing that's important for us is to understand the energy use of the home after the renovations have been completed. And so we've provided a modest gift card in exchange after the renovations are completed if the homeowner shares 2 years of energy data with us, so provides their bills.
Okay, and what was the amount of that gift card?
I can check. I believe it's in the range of $100 to $200.
Okay, and that's for the data sharing?
That's for the data sharing, correct.
Would the homeowners covered by this potential grant, if we approve it, also be eligible for provincial and federal grants for heat pumps and the like?
The short answer is yes. There are some upgrades, for instance, installing storm windows that aren't covered by the provincial or federal grants. So there are some sort of older home specific pieces that aren't covered, but the pieces that are covered, like heat pumps, yes, you're correct, Councillor.
Okay, so potentially they get 3 grants.
Potentially, yep, federally, provincial, and then heritage.
Can you maybe explain what we're doing for people who live in condos, homeowners, who have permission to install a heat pump, for example, but there's a huge expense attached to that, and they're living in, say, a glass-walled condo downtown. It's southwest facing. It's above 30 degrees in the summer. What incentives does the city have for those homeowners?
I'll turn that over to Sean Pander.
Great. Sean Pander, Green Building Manager with the city. We currently don't have an offering available. There are modest offerings available through BC Hydro in the province. But in response to the Earth Day motion, we've been collaborating with them, and there's this recognition that there's an interface between, vulnerability to extreme heat and reducing greenhouse gas emissions through the introduction of heat pumps. So we're looking to bring forward a report on the city's role. Again, we're anticipating both Hydro and the province are going to significantly up their incentive supports and decision-making support tools, but there are going to be gaps in what they bring forward. So we're working very closely with them, and we'll be bringing a report back in December on this. This is what we anticipate to be the program offering that's available across the province, and here are the gaps, and here's the city's role in addressing those gaps.
Okay. What incentives are there for a strata condo owner right now from BC Hydro? My understanding is that they're not eligible for any rebate.
So for individual heat pumps, like for an individual owner wanting, I personally want to install one, there are none at the moment. If the building at a central system level, or if the entire building wants individual heat pumps for every unit, there are incentives. The value of those incentives is very opaque, and we're still trying to unpack how much is that worth versus the value or the cost of doing the retrofit, and that will inform some of the recommendations. If those incentives aren't topped up, then that might form part of the recommendation we bring forward but we're still trying to, again, they don't publish the formula, their funding formula for the amount of support that's offered.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for the report. I have several questions. I'm going to fire through them. Was there any discussion so far if the Heritage Foundation is interested in moving towards a multifamily program, of moving that forward now as opposed to continuing to support single family?
The Vancouver Heritage Foundation has indicated in the past that they're interested in moving towards more multifamily support. And I think if council were to propose a pivot here, Vancouver Heritage Foundation would be supportive.
Okay, and so conceivably, if council has options before it to approve, not approve a grant or amend, if we did not approve this grant, for example, conceivably conversations on the multifamily option with Heritage Foundation could continue?
Certainly.
Okay. And then the reference in the report where it shows that future phases of the program could be considered through the city's equity framework and consider income testing. How do you square equity if somebody's got a home, like Councillor Meisner mentioned, that's worth $10 million, but perhaps they don't report a lot of income? So
great question.
Put those pieces together for me.
Yes, great question, Councillor. I think we'd follow the leadership of some provinces like PEI, where they do their test is the value of the home. So we would agree upon a home's value that could participate, which avoids the challenge of verifying income.
Okay, but I mean, the sort of entry level pricing, you're still talking several $1 million probably for the average heritage home.
Certainly, housing in Vancouver is expensive. You'd be talking something in the sort of $1 to $2 million range at the where the cutoff could be set. But yes, it would be a high value because housing is expensive in the city,
which would have limited efficacy and probably difficult to square when somebody can't afford to make rent.
I mean, certainly, it would be up to the city staff to square it, but we would have to pick a value where there would be some participation from the dwelling type selected, single family or otherwise.
Okay, last question. In terms of I seem to recall, and I wasn't sure if it was this one, so maybe you can let me know. If you look at there seems to be a gap in the granting years. There's several years that were missed. And I recall, and I'm not sure if it was related to this report, maybe you can let me know, partly it was because of the level of identifying a suitable number of homes. Was that this report, or is this another heritage report? Because I see there were no grants given in 2017, 18, or 20, for example.
It may be another report. We have continuously given grants from 2015. So there has been a continuous, the funding has not been offered in every year, but the funding often lasted multiple years. So we continued to welcome homes into the program each year.
Okay, so that's interesting, because I think you're saying if it was $132,000 in 2016, and then there wasn't another grant, if I'm correct, of $200,000 till 2019.
Correct.
So 132 spread over 3 years.
Correct.
Because why was it so little?
The level of interest, so the level of homes that applied to participate was low enough that the funding lasted that period of time.
Okay. Okay, thanks. I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So I got a few questions here. First question, I think you mentioned regarding the mean testing using the value of home.
Yes.
But it could be misleading sometimes because the owner purchased the home 100 years ago. It's very, so my question is how feasible if we use the income instead of value of the home?
Both income and home value are used in different provinces. So we could certainly have a dialogue with PEI, for instance, on home value versus the province of BC uses income, reported income. So both are options, and we could use either a combination of the two, as some provinces do, or choosing one or the other. So we have options.
So as a municipality, it is possible for us to access the income information from the applicants, right?
As part of the application, yes, Councillor, you're correct.
Thank you. So the other question is, so I saw the grant for the heat pump reduced from 6,000 to 1,000.
Yes.
What is the rationale behind?
Great question.
Do we consider the affordability for the applicants? Yeah.
Great question, Councillor. So one of the things that has changed with this iteration is the federal government is providing $5,000 for a heat pump, as well as a low-interest loan, or no-interest loan, sorry. So that's the change, is the federal government's providing money and a no-interest loan.
Okay, I see, thanks. And the other question is, how will the impact of this program be measured, whether it is GHG reductions or the efficiency of the energy system?
Great question. So we have a follow-up visit after the renovations are completed, where a representative from Natural Resources Canada visits the home, does an air leakage test, and verifies the energy use reduction. And then we also get the energy bills to be able to see how much energy use and carbon pollution has been reduced.
Do we do that for every single applicant?
Yes, correct, Councillor.
Okay, so what happens if the outcome is not as significant as what we expect?
We measure that and record that, and then make an adjustment to the program to improve outcomes in the future.
But is there any consequence for the applicant?
If the applicant has completed the underlying upgrades, so a heat pump, improving the windows, there is no consequence for the applicant. Now, if the applicant doesn't undertake the window upgrade or doesn't undertake the heat pump, then they wouldn't receive the incentive.
Okay, thanks. The other question is a very general question. How would we make sure the transparency and accountability throughout the process?
Great question. So we've set up the program to be run by the Vancouver Heritage Foundation as a third party to ensure that accountability, and layered onto that, we use the federal government's Inner Guide program, which is set up for third-party verification. So we're ensure that there's both accountability and clarity in the program.
Okay. I'm going to throw one more last question. So, from your perspective, did you see any other building areas can use the money, generate more impact on environment other than just focusing on this existing documents? Yeah.
Turn that over to Sean Pander.
It's a good question. Unfortunately, it's complicated. These older homes are some of the highest emitters. So, when you look at where the big emissions come and the value of supporting action, if your only metric is greenhouse gas reductions and you're not worried about comfort and resilience and you're not worried about income testing and equity, this is a big program. We aren't, picking one over another. We are looking to shift more and more of our supports into the multifamily space and into supports where we've introduced regulations, and part of the success of those regulations is supporting owners. We're shifting in that direction, but there's value, again, incentives, we have a philosophy that incentives lead to something more robust, a more enduring change. You can't just incent something and wait, expect the action or assume the action will continue unless something else changes. So again, for us, it's important as we work on introducing regulations that we address things for homeowners that might go, hold it, this is really going to be very hard for me. And so we want to create the opportunity for those owners to say, hey, we've been supporting you for 8 years to upgrade your home. It's now time to set a new expectation.
Okay, so in summarizing that, so you do think this program could generate the best benefit for environment at this current stage?
Again, at this level of funding, yes, this is because this is a relatively modest investment. This is an important group and a very vocal group that has extra challenges in reducing their energy use.
We're at time, but we have another round. So.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
Councillor Boyle.
Thanks. I am really appreciating this conversation, having asked for many years about the equity aspects of this program. I'm curious to the question Councillor Kirby-Yung asked, and I think you mentioned earlier too, that the Heritage Foundation is looking to, has said that they're interested in multifamily. What tools exist for us to say, great, we appreciate your interest, that's where we're going, we're going to require that? I mean, we're giving a significant amount of funds to this. If they've said a number of times they're interested in, how do we require that shift?
The program as is designed today, it would be very simple to shift it to include pre-1940 buildings that are 3 stories or fewer. So sort of lower rise buildings. There could be an amendment to the report asking the program or directing the program to focus on 3 stories and under. That would be a relatively simple change to focus on low-rise multifamily.
Why 3 stories and under?
3 stories is the limit for the software, and the there's a building code distinction when you go above 3 stories. It changes from an area called Part 9 to Part 3, and the software that we use from the federal government works for buildings up to and including 3 stories. The good news is there's a lot of pre-1940 multifamily 3-story and under buildings.
Okay. And I know we have been looking to bring in carbon limits for existing detached homes, and my understanding is have been looking at the largest detached homes first and then moving from there. Are there lessons that we're learning in this pilot that will help inform that work and or kind of reduce the resistance or nervousness about bringing those limits in later?
Great question. Yeah, certainly we're learning lessons. We're learning through this program the challenges and the opportunities that exist in pre-1940s homes, and it aids us in the development of regulation. Yes.
Could we still be getting those same lessons while implementing an income or some kind of means tested measure?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, great. And that, again, I'm just kind of thinking this through as I hear other questions, but would staff's recommendation be that we not approve the grants right now and direct it back to be looking at means testing and multifamily, or what's the best approach?
I don't think it needs to be an either or. This program is ready to roll. It's within the budget, and we could offer this program and get direction to develop. Sorry, I'm maybe conflating a multifamily heritage program and a means-tested one. So we could offer this one and develop a means-tested one, but as Chris indicated, we could just probably amend this quite quickly as it is to do it as the program as designed, except have a means test for eligibility.
And then also give direction to work on a multifamily program.
That would be, yeah, that would be very feasible.
Okay. I will leave it there for now. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, thanks. And these are more, I think, straight ahead kind of questions, and appreciate all the answers and questions so far. This is obviously a drop from 2021's grant. And you mentioned there's a wait list. What's the extent of the wait list? How many people are clamoring for this grant?
Great question. The last I checked, there was 12 homes on the wait list. So there is interest.
Okay, and do we have a sense of how many, beyond the wait list, how many potential homes could be, like, based on the amount of permits that we process in a year or that kind of thing?
What we've found historically, if you look at sort of average uptake, a little less than 1 a month is the sort of intake into the program.
Right, but so just more generally speaking, and maybe this isn't even a question for you guys because it's more of a DBL question, that how many retrofitty kind of building permits do we issue on
Great
1940s
question. So the answer I can give is we issued 19 permits last year with a renovation value of $250,000 and over, so these sort of larger renovations. But some of the renovations that are supported by this program are smaller, so I don't have that answer at hand.
Okay. Do we quantify, I mean, and again, this is getting a bit more sort of esoteric on it, but like the actual cost of demolishing a building versus retrofitting, and where the embodied carbon and those kind of like.
We do, and if you're the embodied carbon impact of retrofit is going to be much lower in these cases. These are designed to be fairly low low time retrofit. So for instance, a heat pump can be put in just a day. It requires almost no modification of the building envelope. Storm windows can be added. All those are very low carbon, low waste. retrofits. So they're going to be much lower than, for instance, taking the home down and building a new single-family home.
So I guess, and this is the culmination of this, and where I'm going with all this is how, I appreciate that Heritage Foundation is doing great work in this space, but how do we better integrate this with our own permitting system? And there's very little reference to it on the websites. If I Google building permit, having gone through building permits myself, it's not something that's immediately available. And is there an opportunity to kind of reconcile this more with our building permits, recognizing that on a retrofit, say for heat pumps, you could also be getting into a whole bunch of peeling back the onion and all the other pieces that you'd have to do to accommodate the power upgrade or what have you.
Great question. So one thing we have done is provide information about the program upon application for a building permit. We did do that for a couple of iterations of the program. We don't do it currently. Separately, some of the upgrades within the program, like adding storm windows, do not require a permit.
Sure. But I'm thinking more specifically on the heat pump, and I'm curious why we're not doing that kind of outreach through the permitting process.
Yeah, we certainly could restart that. It was ended due to challenges and staff wanting to sort of focus in providing a limited amount of information. The information was focused on the permit application as opposed to ancillary pieces. So we did stop providing the flyers about the program, information about the program, but we could restart that certainly.
I would say, given the limited amount in this grant, it probably would not, it would just create a larger waiting list. But okay, I appreciate it. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carr.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for the report, too. First of all, one of my questions was just asked by Councillor Fry in terms of embodied emissions. It's something that I think Metro Vancouver is looking at as well. So it'd be interesting to get in future reports, some sense of how important or not, but anyway, the embodied emissions are. My next question, was around the 6,300 tons for the program to date. What percentage of our overall GHGs is that around?
That is a great question, and for that I will turn this challenging question over to Sean Pander.
He's always answered that question for me.
Unfortunately, I don't have that right at my fingertips. If I am correct, I think our buildings emissions total is in the 600,000 ton range. So this would only be about 1% reduction in those emissions. Again, when we look at emission reductions, the value of this program is not in its scale, because the value is in developing regulations, having provided support and offering help to those that are going to be disproportionately impacted by the challenge of meeting the requirement.
And that has been great work that you've been doing, Sean. Can you, while you're at the mic, elaborate a bit on the fact that there is utility here in the program in terms of lessons learned? So how are we sharing the information about what works better? The lessons learned in doing these retrofits.
Well, as Chris indicated, that it in all of our programs where we're piloting and in greater and greater cases where we do a niche pilot, there is an expectation of sharing information back, and whether that's utility usage. In many of our other programs, we require a case study to be developed. But regardless of that, working with the program, the delivery agents, and in this case, Vancouver Heritage Foundation, again, we start to find the types of changes owners are interested in pursuing, what the challenges were, what they've applied for funding, and so we take that into account, recognizing, we're trying to develop a regulation which is, in order to be effective to implement and permit, kind of is one size fits all, but then it gives us information on, some homes will have challenges. Will we need to create exemptions? Will we need to create a means test? That sort of information.
Great. On the utility use, the use of the energy, are we as a city amalgamating some of that that information around how much extra energy it's taking in terms of the grid, the supply of electricity, so that we can inform hydro, that we can get back to BC Hydro retrofitting these buildings is going to be an estimation of X amount of increase in the need for electricity, green electricity?
Yeah, more our work with BC Hydro is not program specific, but it is looking at the sort of aggregated uptake of voluntary as well as regulatory action. We don't usually provide information on total energy demand because hydro, that grows slowly and hydro plans that over, a decade. What we're working with hydro on is updating our models to show the peak use. A lot of the infrastructure in the city, the substations and the wires that come to the city aren't about how much energy you deliver in an entire year. It's about, on the coldest day in the evening, we size the infrastructure for that. So we are actively updating our models around densification, EV adoption, electrification of existing buildings, electrification of new buildings, to show them how the growth in localized demand by different parts of the city, how quickly it will grow, and they can compare that to their historic assumptions and adjust how they deploy upgrades to the grid.
Great. Okay, final question. There's a move that's looking at sort of multifamily dwellings and both, in terms of sort of prioritization of which buildings get it. Which areas of, and this is heritage that we're talking about. So those must be concentrated in certain areas of the city, right? So are we looking at, there's not, I can't think of that many three-story older heritage valued apartment buildings. I think you said that there were quite a few, but where are they in the city?
I'll leave that to Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Yeah, so the program's designed for pre-1940s.
Yes.
That includes heritage. There are, both through Kitsilano, through Strathcona, there are some great examples of multifamily homes with character value. Sorry.
Great. Okay,
We have a second round, though.
Yeah, but he answered. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Clerk, point of procedure, do you have to see the chair? Perfect, awesome. So I just have a couple of comments, questions. So thank you for all the work done on this, by the way. So my question is, what happens if we give a grant out and then someone sells the house? And I would assume it would be for a higher price than before they made the rental. Like, is there a clawback to the city?
No, Mayor, there's no clawback from the city. Once the upgrades are completed, that's the end of the involvement of the program aside from the utility data sharing.
Okay, and so you might have answered the second question then, and I know we're talking about heritage buildings, but at some point in the future, these buildings may get redeveloped, and we don't have to worry about how we get there. Let's just say we get there. Is there a clawback for that as well if, 5 years or if 12 years from now, all the work that we helped with the grant gets knocked down? Is there any kind of clawback there as well?
Great question. No, there's no clawback. We would have those 10 to 12 years of emission reductions, which we would have gained through the program, but there's no clawback of the rebate.
Those are the only questions I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Klassen.
Thanks very much. I'm thankful for being able to come back. This, to me, has been a really fantastic discussion and debate on this issue. And I'm hearing, obviously, a number of threads, and I'm sure staff are as well, regarding the use of these dollars in a way. So I guess I want to just review some of the comments have already been made, but just a little bit of if we decide not to approve this. We still have that funding, that granting ability. We also have some of the partnerships you described, and we also have clearly the objective here, which is to make these older buildings safer. So just so I hear it again, if we send this back, can we foreseeably get another program that would focus on, again, with more of a slightly better equity lens and as well, perhaps a larger impact with multifamily?
100%, yeah. We could bring back a new report that focused on multifamily and had a means test.
Okay. Very good. Thanks very much. Thank you. That was a great answer.
Thank you, Councillor.
Very good.
Thank you very much. Councillor Boyle.
Thanks. I'm wondering if council were to vote these recommendations down, what happens and what direction would be needed if the intent in not approving the recommendations today is to send staff back to work on both this piece around means testing and the piece around multifamily? Is that direction we should, sorry, this is a many question. Should we be referring it back to staff to do that work rather than just voting the recommendations down?
Ideally, yes, referring it back to staff with the focus on a means test. And if there's interest in including more multifamily, or if the focus is only on multifamily and perhaps excluding dwellings with one family or fewer.
Okay, great, appreciate that. I will leave it there, and because I see someone else is on the
Thank you,
list.
Councillor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Montague.
Yeah, so just one more question, kind of following up on this means testing. How do you see that looking? How do you see that working?
The means testing that I feel works the best is PEI, where they both have a threshold for home value and they also have a threshold for income. You meet both of those thresholds and you're welcomed into the program.
And what might that value and income look like?
I wouldn't want to speculate without doing a little bit of research, so I apologize, I'm not able to give the dollar value today.
Okay. I'm just sort of going back to my initial question where I was looking at all these properties and I'm looking at them again and like I can't find one that's at least on the market right now for under 1.9, 1.8, 1.9 million. Like are we talking a means testing, say, income wise of below six figures? Because I don't see the possibility of someone earning below six figures owning a property like this.
Yeah, we could look at what's done to the Clean BC Income Qualified Program. Offhand, I think their cutoff is somewhere around 108,000 for receiving the Clean BC Income Qualified program. That's a household income. And then we need to look at a separate value for home value.
Okay. And do we realistically think $108,000 you said?
That's the Clean BC.
How many houses do you think we would actually find where that was?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could get interest and participation in the program, setting that income threshold. Yes.
Where the owner of the home makes less than $108,000?
Correct.
Okay. Guess I'm in the market for a home. Okay. All right. Thank you, Chair. This is my
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, I will just say that I'm a little leery around. I appreciate the suggestion. I can follow up on that question around referring back to staff, but I'm a little leery about providing really prescriptive language because that assumes that council is going to endorse a means-tested approach. We won't have staff analysis necessarily around the pros and cons of it, of what the income level is set up, as to whether or not you don't want to do means testing, and potentially it would be better to just look at the net number of multi-family units across buildings, giving preference to ones that could be character houses, could be 3-story, character buildings that have more units or impact more homes and families might potentially have more merit, for example, than considering a means testing approach. So I wonder if you can comment on that, because my concern is providing too prescriptive direction around that. If it says, for example, develop a means tested approach, and you come back and say, you know what, actually, we think if we just went with multifamily and focused on the net units, we would achieve GHG outcomes and support more families, for example.
Turn it over to Doug Smith to answer that question.
Great. Thank you. Doug Smith, Deputy General Manager for Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability. Thank you. So I agree with you, Councillor. Ideally, a more generic motion to basically send staff back to review the program through the lens of equity, including multifamily buildings, would be all we would need at this point. I don't think we need too much more detail than that, and we can do some research and bring it back for Council's consideration.
Okay. So seeing that, Mayor, and since seeing no one else on the queue, I would like to move an alternate recommendation. which I have just emailed in.
So, I guess we'll go to, sorry, main queue. Oh, sorry, we need a seconder. Great. Okay, so you're on the queue, and then, so can we have a seconder? Great, Councillor Dominato. Great.
Okay, and I wonder if clerks can bring that up too, if it's helpful. I'll read it out for the record just to, while that's coming up, just so that the public can follow along. And the language currently to refer the report to staff to work with the Vancouver Heritage Foundation to develop a potential multifamily. Sorry, I'm going to strike that. Sorry, I'm actually, sorry, I still have time here. Forgot to strike a couple of words. To develop a potential multifamily framework or program. I'm going to say multifamily program with consideration given to equity and other considerations, and bring back to council for our consideration. And I will send that in so that the clerks have the language too, and it's more clear. 1 second. Sorry, I realized there's an error there, so you should have the new one coming through any moment. Okay, so reading that out again for, so that's up there now.
Great, thank you. And everyone see that?
And just speaking to this, I think what we're hearing clearly is a desire from council to really move in the direction of aligning with our overall housing strategy, which is really seeing a move away from single-family home due to affordability in the city and a focus on multifamily units. Obviously, a desire to still continue to support heritage and heritage retention, but in terms of allocation of City of Vancouver taxpayer dollars and limited dollars, feeling that it's more appropriate at this point in time to shift the focus towards multifamily. And feeling that that provides some balance there. And then looking to potentially the equity considerations, but also as we discuss things like looking at the multifamily and number of net units. And so this language, I hope, is high level enough that it will, and I know staff are listening intently to the conversation, that they will be able to bring forward some alternatives and options for us, where you may say, yeah, we recommend things like considering multi-units and equity, or we actually think that just considering a multi-unit approach on its own, regardless of equity, will deliver more, as I said, net GHGs and potentially help more families. So that's the spirit of the amendment.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Boyle.
Thanks. I'm happy to support this. There'd been some shuffling around different amendment language, and appreciate staff's suggestion that we keep it high level. The two pieces that I just want to highlight that I can appreciate we don't want to be too prescriptive, but I think the income or home value or whatever means testing conversation is certainly interesting and valuable, and I hope recommendations around that are, I assume, will be part of this language here about consideration given to equity and other considerations, as well as one of the concerns I frequently hear, and it's not just in Vancouver, but all over, is existing renters feeling quite nervous actually about energy retrofits, even though they know it could have a significant improvement to their home and their quality of life, because of such a high level of fear around eviction and displacement. And so I know we are conscious of that, but just want to flag on the record that those are important pieces within that equity frame that we'd be looking at. And I know our various pilot projects around multifamily retrofit are keeping that in mind as well, how we do this work, particularly where there's public funds going into it, in a way that protects those existing tenants from getting displaced or seeing their rents massively skyrocket. And that's a really important balance as we build support for these types of programs and work to rebuild that trust and overcome the fear that so many renters have about these building improvements. So anyway, it's kind of a tangent to say I'm happy to support this amendment and appreciate Councillor Kirby-Yung crafting up the language.
Thank you very much. Councillor Klassen.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. So I would also like to support this amendment. I think it kind of meets the bar being set by this council in terms of both addressing climate action and as well just trying to address the issue of fairness and the use of public dollars, which are not in limited supply. It is $300,000, but if we can find the most effective way of using it, I also want to acknowledge the work that continues with the Vancouver Heritage Foundation. We had a fantastic meet and greet last night with our members of our civic agencies, and including several from the Heritage Foundation. So I'm always greatly appreciative of these volunteer bodies because they're extremely engaged in our city and want to do good things. And so this is I think a better solution. I think I always sort of err on the side of keeping things simple, and I always don't want to give more direction to staff than they need. But I think that they've heard from this, I think, really good debate here this morning, that we are looking for some changes to the direction with this program and this funding. I know that we just launched I call it the RARA retrofit program last week, and that was an announcement. And I know that that was built upon previous council work and of course our Earth Day motion earlier in the year. So those kinds of partnerships I think are really positive for our city, and I think that with just a little bit more consideration, this particular program can be that much better and achieve the climate goals that we're all really seeking. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, I'll support this. I mean, I have a few issues with it. I do appreciate that this moves away from trying to conflate land value and home value, because as we know, heritage homes aren't really actually worth a lot of money at all. It's the dirt that we're paying for in the city of Vancouver. So I appreciate that this just is a bit more generally on the equity. I do have a couple of concerns. Number one, for the folks who may be on this wait list right now and have been expecting this, and this is going to delay their projects and permits, and that's unfortunate for anybody who's on the 12+ wait list that was hoping to get these grants. The other concern that I have, and I'm hoping that staff can take this for what it's worth, is the language of multifamily. I know, for instance, more than one family that has multiple generations that have chosen to go in on a home with the parents and then building it out so that the kids can move there with their children. And so 3 generations of a family in one home, that technically isn't multifamily, but it's certainly multi-unit. So I hope when this is coming back that it's not left in this idea of multiple different families, but rather an extended family that chooses to do this kind of retrofit, because I think that's probably a realistic scenario in a lot of heritage houses that aren't as maybe soundproof and carved upable. So I will support this, but I hope that takeaway is kind of left with staff. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Meisner.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'm supportive of the amendment, and I'm glad we were able to find a way forward. It does address many of my concerns around equity and fairness with the program, so much appreciate my colleagues for putting the amendment forward. 53% of households in Vancouver are renters, and 62% of Vancouverites live in multifamily homes, and that's only going to continue to increase as we move towards implementing our Missing Middle program and also just densifying the city. So I think with that significant lack of incentives for multifamily dwellings to install things like heat pumps, we heard today there's currently no incentives from the provincial government, but hopeful that those will be coming soon. I really think it's important to see these public funds redirected to help address that gap for people in multifamily dwellings and also people most in need while achieving our climate goals, which is a key priority for the city and should continue to be. So very happy to support this amendment and find a more equitable and fair way forward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, again, I'm happy to support this amendment. So yeah, I think the equity and other consideration will keep enhancing this program. So I got one question through you, Chair. I want to ask staff. So if this amendment is passed, what is the timeline? When you're going to report back to council in a feasible?
Over to Doug Smith. To answer the question around timeline, for context, developing the program initially took 9 months. So that's just a context of how long it took to develop initially. But Doug?
Yeah, I think that's a good estimate as far as probably early next year, in order for us to go back and look at the data, work closely with the Vancouver Heritage Foundation, and also make sure we have a strong equity lens on it. So early 2024.
Okay, so then what about the funding already approved in 2023 budget?
No, the funding's in a capital budget, so it's fine.
Okay.
The funding will be okay.
Okay, thanks. That's all my question.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thank you. I too will be supporting the amendment, the referral motion, and appreciate that we can get it back fairly quickly. I really want to appreciate the Vancouver Heritage Foundation for their partnership with the City of Vancouver and with building owners in moving forward on reducing GHGs. I think it's really critical that we recognize that every bit counts in terms of reducing GHGs. In this case, there's a secondary benefit, which is preserving some heritage in our landscape, and I think there's a value in that too. It's, neighborhoods of sameness are nowhere near as interesting or vibrant as neighborhoods that have some diversity of buildings in them, and to keep some heritage in your landscape, I think is a very important concept for people. I think they appreciate it. So that piece I think is really good. And I just want to say, we sometimes think, well, 6,000, 6,300 tons that the program reduced our GHGs by. Well, that's not a very big amount. But the point is, it's all those little projects that do add up. I asked the question that it seems that might be 1% of our buildings. Okay, so buildings are about half of our emissions. So basically, you could, for 200 of these kinds of projects, get our emissions to zero. Think about that. 200 of these different kinds of projects would get our emissions down to where we need to aim to. So actually supporting every one of these smaller initiatives, especially if they could be done within 9 months, that's just the time it takes to birth a baby, right? Or create one. Basically, it's, I think that we need to have very open minds around the importance of these projects moving forward in tackling the climate emergency.
Thank you very much. So seeing no one else on the queue, can we bring the amendment to a vote, please? Oh, sorry, it's a referral. So it's the main motion. Thank you. Let me rephrase that. Can we bring the main motion to a vote? Great. And the motion passes unanimously with Councillor Bly not here. Right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the next report held. And that report is number 4, amendments to the mayor and council expenses. Oh, sorry, request to speak. Sorry.
So most of the report is.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Just a point of order, Mr. Mayor. I meant to recuse myself as a conflict of interest on this beforehand. So am I able to do that before we proceed?
Okay. Getting a little ahead of ourselves. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Montague, is there a reason?
Thanks. Sorry, Mary.
As to the conflict?
I was busy with something else when you asked for declarations of conflict. I still have a current outstanding complaint in the process, and while there's no I haven't incurred any expenses. There's always the possibility that might happen. So in an abundance of caution, I'm going to declare my conflict.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And thank you, Councillor Boyle.
Thanks. I will be also declaring a conflict out of an abundance of caution due to an expectation that I will also be bringing a request for reimbursement forward.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me just get caught up here now. Okay, so Councillor Carr, you held this item and you have up to 5 minutes, you have 5 minutes to ask questions of team members.
What about this report? I just need some clarification, so if through you, I could ask some questions to staff, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. So my points of information are these. I understand no partisan use of city property or resources. So in a publication, you would, as I did with my Sudden Silence Hidden Voices, just state Adrian Carr, Vancouver City Councillor, right? No partisan attachment. My question is more around if one of us does an event using our expense, our constituency budget, and at that event, we get asked questions about the goings on at City Hall. It's about an issue. What is fair game for us to talk about? For example, can we talk about the fact that on that issue, there was a vote and the vote broke down like this? Do we have to name all the councillors, or can we say all ABC councillors voted this way, the 3 others voted this way? How picky are we going to be? You know, are there going to be thought police out there monitoring what we say in that way?
Sorry, it's Grant Murray. I'm the Assistant Director of Legal Services, and I was engaged in drafting this report and drafting the bylaw. I do not believe that either of those things would be problematic if you were to discuss the office holder's activities, the office holder's contact information, the role played by the office holder in civic business, and the services provided by the office holder being you. That's certainly fair game. I think that the specific direction was to avoid seeking any contributions to a political party, or as it's known in the Vancouver Charter, an elector organization. But I don't think that in any manner it's supposed to undermine the ability of a councillor to speak their mind about issues, provided that it's not for the purposes of fundraising or for the purposes of advocating contributions in some manner to a political organization or political party. But it certainly was not intended in any manner to be a difficulty with that. As you well know, all of your voting record is already public, and that's certainly something that could be commented on in meeting with anybody from the public. I hope that's a satisfactory answer.
Oh, it's absolutely satisfactory. Thank you, Grant. I really appreciate that. It's not a limiting factor in terms of our right to speak freely around the decisions that happen at the council table, but rather that we just will not raise money, which is fine, using city resources and totally understandable. So I'm good with that. But I see there's other questioners. Otherwise, I would have moved the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Meisner.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Carr, for raising that. My question kind of follows up on that. Some councillors have websites that are separate from the city website for their campaign and for keeping their constituents updated on what's happening at council. And some of those, sometimes those websites are paid for out of the councillors' communication expense fund. But my question is around having a donation button, for example, on those external websites. Is that something that would not be allowed in this new bylaw framework?
I would think that that would be prohibited if there was public money used for the purposes of collecting or raising the donations. I understand that that's something that we're trying to prohibit through this amendment. So if your question is a website that is funded in some manner through public funds is in fact asking for donations, I would think that that would cross the line according to the way that this is drafted.
Okay, that was my understanding as well by reading it. So thank you for confirming that.
If it was a separate website that did not in any manner get any funding from the city, that's of course fine. Or if it was a political party's particular website that was in no way funded through the city, then I think that would also be fine.
Yeah, I'm referring specifically to counselors' websites. Several counselors have their own websites, and some of them do have donation buttons on them. So I just wanted to get clarification around that. So it sounds pretty clear to me.
I think it would be better to avoid that based on the wording of the bylaw.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dominato.
Sure, thanks. I was just happy to move the report and recommendation.
Awesome, great. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Great, Councillor Klassen. Council, is there any discussion? Back on.
Chair, thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to reflect thanks for staff for following through and bringing forward this report, both driven by council member motions from this term and last term. Just speaking to the issue of the additional dedicated funds for legal expenses, I think we have seen over the last term and also this term where there's been complaints and matters that need to be investigated, and counselors have had to retain legal support, and we have a number, obviously, of recused today. It comes at a great cost, and so I think, and it can be anyone. We've seen members across all political stripes who've had a complaint filed, and they've had to go through a process of investigation and engagement and engage lawyers. So I really think this is a necessary measure. And then on the subject of clarifying eligible expenses, I think this is really important, and it's very much mirrors the definitions that are used at the provincial level for MLAs in terms of how constituency funds can be used in support of community work, and in this case, civic work, but prohibiting that those funds, public funds, taxpayer dollars, be used for partisan purposes. And I think there were concerns raised last term about questions as to the appropriateness of public funds being used by the city. And so I think what it does is adds that clarity for councillors, but also increases transparency and accountability to the public for use of those dollars. So I appreciate the work that's gone into bringing forward these two proposals.
Great, thank you very much. Seeing no one else on the queue, I like to bring it to a vote. There's no one online, so I'm clerk. Can you please take us to the voting screen? And council, please register your vote on the voting panel. Great. And so the motion passes, I guess, unanimously with declared conflicts with Councillor Kirby-Young, Boyle, and Montague, and Councillor Bly absent. Thank you. It's very quiet. And we can get started, right? Okay, so we have 9 bylaws on the agenda for enactment. Council members who were not present for the meetings related to public hearing enactment bylaws must confirm that they have reviewed the proceedings of the meetings if they wish to vote on the enactment. Bylaw 1 is from the public hearing of June the 14th, 2022. Councillors Klassen, Meisner, Montague, Joe, and myself were not on council at the time and will need to review the proceedings to be eligible to vote. Councillor Klassen, have you reviewed the proceedings and will you be voting on the enactment?
Yes, I have and I will.
Thanks. Councillor Meisner. Councillor Montague.
I have and I will.
Councillor Joe. And I have not, and I will not. Bylaw 3 is from the public hearing of April the 12th, 2022. Councillors Bly and Kirby-Young were absent for this item at the public hearing. Councillors Klassen, Meisner, Montague, Joe, and myself were not on council at the time. However, on May the 30th, 2023, Councillors Kirby-Young, Klassen, Montague, and Joe advised that they had reviewed the proceedings and were eligible to vote. Councillor Bly, well, it's not here, so she won't be voting. Councillor Meisner, have you reviewed and will you be voting? I have not, and I will not be. Bylaw 5 is from the public hearing of January the 18th, 2022. Councillors Klassen, Meisner, Montague, Joe, and myself were not on council at the time. However, on May the 30th, 2023, Councillors Klassen, Montague, and Joe advised that they had reviewed the proceedings and were eligible to vote. Councillor Meisner, have you reviewed the proceedings and will you be voting? Great, and I have not, and I will not. Bylaw 7 is from the public hearing of June the 21st, 2022. Councillor Bly was absent for this item at the public hearing. Councillors Klassen, Meisner, Montague, Joe, and myself were not on council at the time. However, on June the 27th, 2023, Councillors Klassen, Meisner, Montague, and Joe advised that they had reviewed the proceedings and were eligible to vote. I have not reviewed the bylaw, and I will not be voting. Bylaw 9 is from the public hearing of October the 14th, 2022. Councillors Bly and Dominato were absent for this item at the public hearing. Councillors Klassen, Meisner, Montague, Joe, and myself were not on council at the time and will need to review the proceedings to be eligible to vote. Okay, so Councillor Dominato, have you reviewed the proceedings and will you be voting on the enactment? Councillor Klassen?
I have and I will.
Councillor Meisner? Councillor Montague?
I have and I will.
Councillor Joe? And I have not and I will not be. Would someone like to move a motion to adopt bylaws 1 through 9? Great, thank you, Councillor Meisner. Seconded by Councillor Carr. Council, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. The list of approved bylaws can be found on the city's website. So there are 4 administrative motions on the agenda today. Number 1 is approval of form of development 1083 Nelson Street, formerly 1059 to 1075 Nelson Street. Does any member wish to declare a conflict of interest on this motion? Council, are there any questions to team members? Would someone like to move a motion? Councillor Klassen, thank you very much. Is there a seconder? Councillor Carr, thank you. Council, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion passes unanimously. Number 2, approval of form of development 1006 to 1010 East King Edward Avenue. Does any member wish to declare a conflict of interest on this motion? Council, are there any questions to team members? Seeing none, would someone like to move a motion? Great, Councillor Joe, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Kirby-Young, thank you. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Approval of, number 3, approval of form of development 708 East 28th Avenue, formerly 4408 to 4488 Fraser Street, and 707 to 709 East 29th Avenue. Does any member wish to declare a conflict of interest on this motion? Council, are there any questions to team members? No, would someone like to move a motion? Great, seconded by Councillor Klassen. It was moved by Councillor Meisner. Council, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say yay. Great. All those opposed say nay. Great. The motion carries unanimously. Number 4, approval of form of development 3304 Kingsway. Does any member wish to declare a conflict of interest on this motion? Oh, Councillor Kirby-Young.
Oh, no, sorry.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much. Seeing none, Council, are there any questions to team members? No. Would someone like to move a motion? Great, thank you very much, Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Joe. Council, is there any discussion? No. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. The motion carries unanimously. Okay, notice the council member motions. Are there any notices of council member motions for upcoming standing committee meetings? I would like to remind council that due to the amendment of the procedure bylaws, members' motions will be placed on standing committee agendas. Okay, so, and this is a reminder to please state the title of the motion and the date of the standing committee meeting on which you intend to move the motion. Be sure to send the title via email to the city clerk. And we do have a couple of people. Councillor Kirby Young.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'd like to submit a notice of motion for the September 12th council meeting entitled Addressing the Hotel Supply Gap to Support the Tourism Economy and Reduce Pressure on Local Housing.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Fry.
Yeah, notice for the July 26th Standing Committee meeting, guidance and clarity for council decisions in open meetings, co-submitted with Councillor Boyle.
Thank you very much. Any last takers? None? All right, new business. We have one item of new business on the agenda today, and it's requests for leaves of absence as follows. Councillor Bly for civic business from meetings on July the 18th and 20th from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. and July the 26th from 9:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Councillor Montague for civic business from meetings on July the 18th from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. And Councillor Meisner for civic business from meetings on July the 13th from 6 p.m. onwards. Council, are there any other new items of business? Councillor. Okay, oops, missing that. Okay, so let me stop the timer. Sorry. Okay, so can we, sorry, do I need to, can we please have a mover? Great. Councillor Kirby Young, seconded by Councillor Montague. All those in favor say yay. Yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. The motion carries. Now, Council, are there any other items of new business? Councillor Dominato.
One for July 25th, 9:30 to 12 noon for civic business, and one for July 27th, 5 p.m. onwards for personal business.
Thank you very much. So noted. Point of procedure, do I have to see the chair? Oh, sorry. Can we get a seconder, please, for Councillor Dominatos? Thank you, Councillor Carr. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. Motion carries unanimously. Sort of point of procedure, do I have to see the chair? No, great, thank you. I do have an item of new business, leave of absence. So on Wednesday, July the 12th from 3 p.m. onwards for civic business, and on September 26th, 27th, and 28th, and October the 4th and 5th for personal reasons. And I did circulate that too. Thank you. Can I please have a seconder?
Second.
Great, thank you, Councillor Kirby Young. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries. Councillor Kirby Young.
Yeah, I have one for, I feel like we should have bundled all these up. I have one for July 26th. I may have sent a typo in there from 5 p.m. on for civic business.
Thank you. Can we please have a seconder? Great, thank you, Councillor Boyle. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Councillor Fry.
Thanks, Mayor. New business LOA request for July 18th to 21st for civic business.
Awesome, thank you. Can we please have a seconder? Great, Councillor Carr. All those in favor say yay. Okay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Councillor Klassen.
Thanks, Mayor. Leave of absence for personal business, July 20th, 5 p.m. onwards.
Second.
Great. All those in favor say yay. Yay. All those opposed say nay. Councillor Joe seconded. Thank you. Councillor Meisner.
Yes, sorry about this. Doctor's appointment, July 13th, or sorry, 12th, 3 to 4 tomorrow. Personal reasons.
Thank you. Can I please have a seconder? Councillor Joe, all those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Are there any other items of new business before we move on to inquiries and other matters? Right. All right. So, Council, are there any inquiries or other matters? Oh, Councillor Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I want, through you, Chair, to make an inquiry to City Manager. I think last year in August, at the end of the last council term, the GM of ACCS sent a memo to council providing updates on the progress and the future works required for city's anti-racism strategy. I really want to express my appreciation to the great works and effort in putting together the memo. So I think considering this, there's so many important and valuable insights from that previous memo, which is almost a year ago. I would like to ask about the possibility to, for updating the memo and regarding the future progress and milestone and the future steps to continue advancing this anti-racism strategy for City of Vancouver. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Zhou. So yeah, happy to report back with a memo on that. I can say that the last year, the social policy team has been significantly impacted both by staffing challenges as well as work related to the Hastings Street encampment, street bending, and so on. So we have not made as much progress in the last year, but happy to provide council with the background on that as well as the work that we anticipate coming forward.
Okay, thanks, City Manager.
Great, thank you. Councillor Boyle.
Thanks. I also have a request to the city manager, which is just in light of the pretty dire warnings that we're hearing from the province around droughts. I'm wondering if council can get an update. I mean, happy to hear now, but also an update on how we can help amplify requests across the city to be best managing water.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. So my understanding right now, and I'll confirm, is that Metro is still operating at stage 1 water restrictions. So we have not escalated yet to stage 2, but happy to provide an update on kind of that and what the projection might look like for the rest of the summer.
I would appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks. Question 3 to the city manager, and it's with respects to the U Street pilot. I know that staff, council have been asking questions and some information's come back, but I wonder if you can clarify for the public, because we're getting a tsunami of feedback, confusion between, as has been identified, if it's a throughway versus a plaza, why it doesn't have more activation, questions about accessibility and access, not liking the implementation, the small size of the area as opposed to being bolder. So what is the status? How long will U Street remain up like that? Because it is a ongoing, very high level of concern feedback that we're hearing.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. So absolutely appreciate that. And, we're certainly, staff are hearing those issues as well and are actually soliciting, as you know, feedback around how it's working. This is an experiment. So it is the first time that this has been trialed on U Street. It is a challenging implementation in that there are many businesses there that we need to maintain access to. So it's coming to a balance of how to provide for a pedestrian-only type environment, but also ensuring those businesses can continue to operate and that the actual traffic flows around that block or those blocks are functional as well. So there are a number of changes that staff are contemplating. Happy to provide the kind of feedback on that, and we'll continue to assess how it's working.
Is there any contemplation versus making changes, trying to fit square peg in round holes, or any contemplation or acknowledgement that we want to pedestrianize streets, but maybe this isn't the one or the location, as opposed to just, it feels a bit like trying to square peg around a round hole?
So that's a great question, Councillor. I mean, I can certainly take that back to staff. I think at this stage we're not. Our suggestion wouldn't be that we're at the stage yet of saying it's not possible to make this work. Obviously, that council can issue direction in that regard as well. So I think the changes that are kind of planned in process, my recommendation would be to give those a chance to see how those pan out, and we can report back on that. But obviously, if council feels differently about that, that's something that. And
one quick follow up: how long is the pilot plan? How long is it planned to remain up, even if it's doctored a little bit?
Yeah, the plan was for the summer months. That was what it was implemented relatively quickly to get it in time for the summer to see how it was working. So it's something that can be removed. It's obviously temporary at this stage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clausen.
Thanks very much. Through you, Chair, to the City Manager. Thanks very much for the report back on the state of affairs with the Mountain View Cemetery. There's a lot of good information in there. There has been a continuing sort of narrative from community members. I realize that it's been challenging because of the removal of the hedge, but the access entrance to on Prince Edward is a real source of concern. It was attaching to the pathway right next to the memorial for the military service, and it just meant that people who had not a kind of a safe and more calm access to walking through that space. I think it's in an area that is a little bit has a bit of a park deficit. It's proven a great place for people to go out and just enjoy some of the natural surroundings. Very beautiful and serene place. So I just wanted to again hopefully get a little bit of a better, clearer idea on the goals and the timelines for that Prince Edward entrance to be reopened.
Thanks, Councillor, for the question. I do appreciate the issues that residents in that neighborhood have expressed, and I think the challenges that our team are trying to manage in terms of historically people walking on graves and things like that. I'll have to report or get back to you around the timelines, specifically around the Prince Edward address or access point, I should say. But understand the question. Happy to follow up on that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no one else on the queue. Can we have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Great, Councillor Dominato, that was quick. Councillor Boyle, thank you very much. All those in favor say yay. Yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Sorry.